Hey folks, how you doing? So good afternoon. So this is a video that was quickly coming, especially after the first video. It's why it took so long for me to make. Something just didn't quite add up right in the last video. The math was right, but slight subtlety here on why in some ways what was before a bad example. I mean, it's not the math is correct, so the idea is correct, but we just got to give this a bit of a tweak. So basically, on page 254, right, it states that if you have a skill that applies to a test you make, you gain +2 bonus on the test. And on 258, when you're looking at how you assist another creature, right, you can attempt to assist provided you have a skill that applies to the test. The wording is the same. So thank you for the folks who are beating me up in the, maybe beats up a bad word, but you understand what I mean. Thank you for pointing out my mistake in the previous video. Perfect. Uh, basic comes down to is the person helping will always get at least a +2 on the test. So therefore, they are a little more likely to provide a bonus to the person helping. On top of that, so there's a couple other things as well, right? One is just an FYI that the skill you pick, that the helper is going to pick to help the person doing the test, has to be a different skill than the actual test itself. So, like, if you're looking at the list of skills here, right? If I'm trying to climb a wall, right? Here I go up the wall, and someone wants to help me, they can't use, if I'm using the climb skill to climb the wall, they can't use the climb skill to help me. They have to use a different skill. They have to justify it with a different skill than the one that is being, whoops, you'll get to the math. Don't get too excited. They have to use a different skill than the one that is actually being done. And the director has to bless it, right? Someone can't climb the wall and saying, well, I have the jump skill and I'm going to tell you how to jump from ledge to ledge to get up the hill. You could try that, but the DM has to say, or the director has to say yay or nay. Right? So just keep it in mind. You have to make a convincing case to the director to get even the chance to assist on a test. By the same token, the director will also choose a characteristic that can give the helper a bonus as well. So, going back to this again, you notice the skills are not tied to any particular characteristic. They're not tied to might or agility or, the other skills, right? They're just skills. Whereas in 5e, they're tied to one particular, wisdom, dex, whatever it might be, right? They're not done in this one. So, the DM or the director is going to say, you're going to help? Great. What skill are you going to use? Great. Okay, well, you can use that skill to help out, and you can use your might bonus. And you might say, well, I think it should be dex. And you can say, well, it's not dex, but agility. But that's too bad. It's going to be might. Right? So the director gets to say which characteristic bonus it is and which whether the skill is going to give the +2, well, whether the skill is going to apply or not. If the skill applies, you get +2. I think in my mind, I was thinking that you needed yet another skill to get the +2 on top of the helping, and I was just reading that wrong. So all good. So bottom line, like I said, so the helper, if the director says the skill applies, you're going to get a +2 bonus on the helper roll, right? And you'll get an additional 0 to +2 bonus depending on which characteristic it is and this is for a first level character, assuming, and what you have there. So how does that change the numbers? Not as much as you would think. Not as much as you would think, but it does change them. So let's look at the best case scenario. Like if I look at the last video as like the absolute lowest worst case scenario, let's look at the best case scenario just for kicks. Let's assume that the helper gives his buddy an edge on his test, right? So it's not going to be an automatic success, and it's not going to be a heavy fail. It's going to be right there in that sweet spot, or it's a sweet or ish spot where you get an edge, right? So you get an edge on your test, and because me being a smart player, I thought I'd be good at this test. Maybe I'm doing that wall climbing thing, and I'm a big, strong guy, and I have a climb skill. So I'm like, yeah, I bet you I'm going to get +4. So I use my climb, and I get +4. It's a a might skill, and I get +4 on my roll. Awesome sauce, piece of cake. Let's rock. Well, curiously, if you have +4 on your roll, that's what this bottom chart is, and you have an edge because that's what your helper gave you, yes, you have a 90% chance of passing the test. Pretty good. But you really only have a 55% of doing it cleanly, which means, you have a 45% chance of either failing or passing with a consequence. You climbed up the wall and the guard saw you, or you climbed up the wall and you loosened some rocks and everyone took 5 points of damage below you. I don't know, right? Something. So yes, you got up the wall, kind of a thing that you might get a consequence for it. And I mean, if you were watching Age of Umbra and that was Daggerheart, so it depends. Your mileage may vary with your DM as well on how bad a consequence they might throw at you. Those consequences were nasty, right? And this is supposed to be a heroic system. You could very well see the DM, giving a consequence other than losing a few hit points of damage if you're going by, I guess, the intent of how dramatic the system's supposed to be. I don't know. It's up to you. But yeah, I mean, with all your bonuses, something bad could still pretty almost likely happen. All right, so let's take a look. Again, just kind of looking at the extremes a bit on what happens if, let's assume again, for all of this, just for funsies, since the last video was looking at like no bonuses whatsoever. I was trying to like make a clean no bonus situation. Let's look at maximum bonus and see what you get here. Okay, so this for us to start with, let's assume it's a medium test. The person doing the test is getting +4, and they're getting no help. You got a 79% chance of passing the test, right? That would be this down here. 43 plus 36 is 79. You do have the most likely outcome is having some sort of consequence, even though it is a medium test, and you're pretty good at it. You have a fairly good chance of getting a consequence. So let's keep that in mind. Let's assume that the person is helping you, but they have no bonus outside of the +2 they get from helping in the first place. So +2 from helping, no bonus from their characteristic. You're only bumping up to an 82.7. You got 82.7, right? Because you're using the +2 column here for the probability for the helper helping. And then, for the medium test +4, you're going back down to here again, right? So you're either getting the Bane, or you're getting the Edge, or you're getting the double Edge, right? So that's the 82.7. If you got a great helper and he's getting a +4. So that's this one here. You get the automatic +2, and you get the +2 bonus because you're characteristic. So he's an awesome helper. You're awesome at the task. 88.1%. So for being awesome at the whole thing on a medium test, from no help to awesome help, is 9%. 9%. Right? So let's go with a hard test, because that's where it really gets more interesting. Right? So for a hard test, no help, +4, because you're really good at this hard test by yourself, you have a 36% chance of passing. So you as the tester, again, has a +2 bonus because he has a skill that would help you, and the characteristic, you have a +2 in it as well. No help, 36% chance of passing with no bad consequences. All right. If you have a helper, whoa, that bumps it up 11, almost 12%. Right? Again, you're using this +2 because there's no extra bonuses beyond the +2. And you're going to use the 21%, the 50, sorry, where am I? Yeah, 21, 55, 79. You go up almost 12%. In the medium test, you only went up 9% for the awesome guy. You know, let's say you got an awesome helper on this hard test. Now you're up to, now using this numbers here for the helper roll, +2 plus +2 is the +4. You're up to 56.5%. You're getting almost an 11% bonus. Well, 20% bonus, I'm sorry. From 36 with no help to a great helper, 20% and change. Whereas from here to here, it was only 9%. Right? So why? Why is it so dramatic for one versus the other? And the answer to that is this, right? These are the possible outcomes on number of outcomes on 2d10, right? So this top one here, I didn't totally label it for this, but the top one here would be how many outcomes for an 11, and on the ends would be how many outcomes for a 2 or 20, right? So I know this is the outcomes for 2d10, but this distribution, this curve, is driving all the numbers in your calculations. So what does this mean? It means that if I go back for a second, let's say I have a 79% chance of getting through the test and passing it. Okay, well that means you have 80% of this graph. You have all of this and all the way down to here. Like maybe you have from this line all the way back. The only thing you can improve on is this little bit here. Right? It's not like a D20 system where every number gives you 5%. And this system, numbers closer to the average give you a potentially bigger bump than it's going to when you've already covered most of this, right? If I go from here to here, I get an extra 10 possible outcomes. If I'm going from here to here, I'm only getting a possible 3 possible outcomes. It's still one step either way. In a D20 system, every step is 5%. Not so in a 2D20 system. And like I said, this distribution is driving every number in there. It's like, you know, under the curtain. And that's why when you look, when you have a crappy chance of passing, getting a helper is going to give you a bigger boost, right? Because now 36% chance you're in this area, right? You're at the bottom half of this curve and you're trying to improve going up, right? So if you get a bad spin, There's only this little crap down here that you're losing. But if you're getting a good spin, you're getting up into these bigger numbers. And that's what I think is driving this whole thing in the end. So in the end, right, I mean, it looks like, and I could do a whole bunch of more of these, but I don't want to bore people any more than I've already have probably. But, it looks like the smaller the bonus, the smaller chance you have of succeeding, the more the help is going to help you. And if you're really good at succeeding, then the help isn't going to give you as much help as it would the other way around. You still get help either way, at least, which is good, right? So it's an interesting kind of system for sure. I would say in a lot of ways, it feels like a lot of numbers, a lot of calculations just to maybe get because you're not always going to be this awesome on your help or this awesome on your test, right? Depending on what test is going on here. So there's certainly a whole bunch of different dynamics going on here. But I mean, it definitely feels like a lot of calculations and a lot of stuff to figure out whether the help works or not. So my thought of that is, as a DM, if I got to go through all these gyrations, right? There's a test, right? Someone's going to decide to help or not, right? The group has to decide who's going to do the test, potentially. Decide if you're going to get a helper. Decide whether the helper has a skill that can actually help. Decide whether which characteristic is going to apply to the helper for the test. And then after all that, the helper is going to have to spin some dice, figure out what tier it's in, and then based on that result, the other guy is going to throw some dice and figure out what the final result of the whole thing is. And then once you've done all that, I guess my point is that's a lot more than the DM in 5e saying, yeah, you get plus to the roll, go for it. He's helping you get advantage, right? There's a lot of gyrations here. So as a DM or someone running it, if I'm going through that much pain to do these calculations, then the rewards better be good and the consequences better be consequences. Because there's no sense in going through all those extra steps and having the reward or the consequences potentially being small potatoes. At least that's my 2 cents. So that's it. Short video. It's a good system, I think. I like it. It's definitely different. And we'll see how it plays. I'll see how it plays probably in September. Not too many people on vacation and all that kind of stuff to really get something really going, which is why I'm trying to make sure we got this right in our heads before we start up after probably Labor Day. So have a good rest of the day and talk to you soon. Bye.